Welcome to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit, hosted by The Roller Coaster. My name is Lucy Q. 5 years ago, the emotional turmoil of midlife turned my life into a shitstorm. To make things worse, I had no idea that my chaotic emotions were due to the roller coaster of midlife. I thought I was crazy, and I felt completely alone. I've come to realize that midlife is more than a list of symptoms that we have to endure or cure. Midlife is the beginning of our next chapters. This is our time to be heard, to live our best lives, and to fix those pesky hormones. Join me as I chat with experts and industry leaders about nutrition, bone health, hormones, mindset, healing, journaling, living life to the fullest, and yes, even sex. I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride. I was finally able to start my journaling practice back in 2018, but that was only after several failed attempts. Before I was really able to connect with journaling, I had purchased countless blank journals with high hopes of pouring myself onto their pages. Instead of spilling my words of wisdom and insight, I'd find myself sitting there just staring at blank pages, painfully trying to find something to write. That is why I created Your Journaling Journey, a quick start guide to begin your journaling practice today. Your Journaling Journey is a guided journal with daily prompts, gratitude, and affirmations. You can get your copy of Your Journaling Journey today on Amazon or check out the show notes for links. Welcome back to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit. I'm your host, Lucy Q, and joining me is Stacy Reck. Stacy Reck teaches art journaling as a way to heal. And early in her counseling career, Stacy had led a grief and loss group. And one night, the room felt really heavy and nobody wanted to share. And it was in that moment of awkwardness that she broke out some crayons, paper, and music and had everyone draw their feelings. And from that one night, everything that she knew about mental health shifted and changed. Stacy is a holistic counselor with training in Expressive Arts, Dream Mythology, holistic leadership, and she is certified in Past-Life Regression Therapy. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you, Lucy. Nice to see everybody.
Now, I took a little pause there because one of these things that you're qualified in, I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce. Is this Jungian? What is that?
Jungian Psychology. So, Jungian.
Oh.
Yep.
I'm looking at that. We're going, I'm just going to skip over that right now.
That's okay. Do you know Carl Jung? So it's related. It's Carl Jung's. Right. So.
Okay.
So that's really about imagery. So a lot of his work was based on imagery and the meaning of things in imagery. So in terms of how does that dovetail into what I do, everything we create comes from our subconscious. This relates to what Jung talked about. And I'm not going to go into the details because we're not here for long enough. But basically, your subconscious mind, just like with your dreams, things come out in your dreams and when you do art from your subconscious mind, and it can help you learn more about yourself.
So I've been journaling for 5 years now, written word journaling, and I can see how that's transformed my life, but I've never done any art journaling. And in fact, I'm actually quite intimidated by the concept of art journaling because, well, part of it is because I'm married to a gifted artist and one of my sons is a gifted artist. So it's always, I can remember when my son was younger, he'd ask me to draw a picture and I'd draw my little stick man and he'd be like, no, draw it like Daddy does. I'm like, I can't do that. So can you share a little bit more about what art journaling is and how you've seen it transform and help other people?
Sure. So when I sort of adopted the name art journaling, but it's really visual journaling. And I started when I was in school. I read a book, which I'm going to forget the name of now, but I read a book about a woman who said imagery and healing can heal. And she used this form as a therapy in her practice. And so I sort of started calling it art journaling. So I feel like I can't change now, but it's visual journaling, is what it is. And I'm going to start with this one comment. And it's actually, if you're not an artist, you'll do better with this form of art journaling than if you are an artist. So, and that's nothing against the artist, by the way. So, when you're trained to be an artist, you have all these things you know. You have your, I'm going to call it a recipe for lack of a better word, but you know how to create images and make things look perfect, right? So, if you're drawing a picture of a bird, it's going to look like a bird. If I'm drawing a picture of a bird, it's going to be a V on the piece of paper. You know what I mean? I'm really
Yeah.
not an artist. I'm creative, I'm crafty, I'm a lot of things, but I could never really say that I'm an artist. And I actually have some stuff here. If you want me to share a little, I could show a quick picture, but
Oh,
um
absolutely. Like if you want to share anything, I know anyone listening to the audio portion won't be able to get it, but anyone that's goes to the Pod Summit pages, they'll be able to see the video.
okay, cool. So I'll show you this one in this journal. So this is the mess I make on my pages, if you will.
Okay.
And the fun to this is you don't have to be thinking. So you said that you're a writer, and I happen to think writing is fantastic also. I also keep a journal where I write in it. So one of the best things that I ever started doing was I one day got stuck in traffic, and it was one of those moments where I was frustrated. I had had a bad day, and by the time I got home I was just from my job, I was just like, you know. And I sat down and I wrote on a in my art journal because I didn't have anything else handy. I wrote to get out all of my feelings. And I looked at that page and I said, what can I do now? And I said, well, how about if I transform that page? So I took some paint and I made that page with, I left some of the writing sticking out, and I transformed that page with paint and paper and whatever else I had and made something that looked like what I just showed you. So it was a way, by the time I finished, I was back to my normal self. I wasn't angry anymore. I had let it all out and I felt really good. So this is how I use art journaling. So it's not anything specific. It's anything you want to do in your journal. In the beginning, I was terrified of doing journaling things. So I had a professor that led us on a visualization. So he had us close our eyes and follow something. So we created something in our mind. Now, some people aren't that visual; they can't create something in their mind. So he said, when you're done, scribble on the paper if that's all you know how to do. And after, I guess I had that class for a whole semester. At the end of the semester, everybody talked about how much better they felt because we did that journaling process at least once a week. So, how much better they felt about themselves and how they were dealing with emotions in a different way. So, this was a whole new thing to me when I started doing this stuff, but it works. And I've seen it work when I led that group, that grief and loss group. And I've seen it work just with, in general, changing people's lives, even if you don't know why it changes your life. So, do you have to be an artist? It's almost better if you're not, because you're not sitting there saying, oh, I need to get the wing just perfectly on the bird. You're just drawing an image that represents the bird, and you're not so worried about it. You're not going to, you probably don't share your written journals with anybody. Is that correct?
No.
So these
Hell
aren't
no.
meant to share. Now I do because this is what I'm doing, but
Mm.
you're not meant to share it. This is for you only. If you feel like you want to share it, so I run groups online and we share our work, but not everybody shares what they make, and that's okay too. So you're just looking as a way to maybe release some emotion. I have people do one of my favorite exercise for people to get them out of their head is to use their non-dominant hand and do non-dominant hand drawing. And you know what? I like those better than dominant hand drawings. They come
And
out
it's,
quirky.
we all have that creative side to us. And I think back to, certainly when I went to what we call kindergarten here in Canada, most of your day was spent, well, it was half a day. You would have the paint center and you would have the plasticine center and you would have these different mediums that you would use just to create and feel.
Right.
But, certainly throughout your school years, art became less and less. And in fact, a lot of schools are having their art and music programs cut back
Yeah.
due to funding problems. But I still find that you do get, call it an urge to be creative.
Yes.
And one of the things that I do is I get those blank canvases that you get at the craft store. And I like to write a quote on it and then, or paint it and then put the quote on it. But I want to say I get stuck because I know I want to create something, but it's just getting that creativity sort of out of here, wherever it is, and onto what I'm working on. Is that something that gets easier with practice?
I think it gets a lot easier with practice because in the beginning, I wasn't really sure what I would want to do. So a lot of times I used collage. So I'd take a magazine. So this is another thing. If you can't draw a bird, right? For example, you take a magazine and you cut something out that you like and you can maybe paint the background. Maybe you want to make a color in the background of your page in your journal and you glue the bird down. And then maybe you find some other collage pieces you can collage around it. So in the beginning, you can certainly do things like collage, which I still absolutely love to do collage. So, there's ways around this idea of having to be this perfect artist. I don't like the word perfect. And, where we can create and we can be happy, and it does get easier as you go. It's hard for anybody. And I'm going to bet you if you asked your son or your husband, um, it's hard for anybody to think in their mind, oh, I'm going to draw a picture of, let's say, a flower. Unless you have that flower sort of in front of you and you can see all the small details. It'd be hard for anybody to create that without looking at something. So it's hard to get started if you don't have something like that. So there's a lot of workarounds that we use. I did the other day, I did a video and I did something called, I made scrappy piles. So I took all the scraps off of my desk of things that I didn't really want to throw away. I thought they might be valuable and I just glued a bunch of them together. Now, this is a way that I use getting started in your journal. You can just glue this right in and then paint something around it. It could be, polka dots, it could be lines, it could be who knows what you might create. But that's almost not important. It's important that you're feeling, that you find a medium that you like. So it could be paint. I like to tell people, use your fingers and paint. It could be, when I started, I liked pastels a lot because they were smudgy. So if I made a mistake, I could kind of smudge them out. And even that became something after a while. I wasn't even sure um, I would like that, but I kept doing it and I would do flowers and things and they became very watery looking, very smudgy. And then I went sort of to a little bit of watercolor. It gave me I felt more brave as I was doing it. But what happened in the group that I had, because it was a group, we would go into I've called meditation, visualization. So I would guide them sort of with the music. I would say, okay, now let's think about what's bothering you today. Is there a color that you associate with that? Is there a feeling you associate with that? Is there something else? And I'd walk them through a path of, whatever was happening. Let's say you lost someone and you want to deal with that. So draw a picture. When we came out of the visualization, I'd say draw a picture of whatever you saw. Now that's open-ended, right? They don't have to draw exactly the person they saw. They could draw a cloud in the sky. They could draw something that had nothing to do with anything they saw in their visualization. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people will say, especially in the beginning, I didn't see anything. Well,
I was
make it
just
up.
thinking when you said that, I'm like, oh, I'm just like blank. Or even, what's the color associated with your feeling? I'm like, I don't know.
So this is exactly what I deal with, right? So I say, make it up. If you're not sure, just make it up because your subconscious is really going to give you the answers whether you know it or not. So again, I want to go back to this idea. You have to find your medium. So some people are better with paint, some people like markers, colored pencils, whatever it may be. So in the early days, I used mandalas a lot. So we all would you can search mandalas on the internet and download them, coloring mandalas, and we colored mandalas. That became so addictive. The women would go home for the week we'd hand out a bunch of mandalas, and they'd go home and color. Some love to use the gel pens, the jelly rolls, and
Yeah, I love
color
gel
in.
pens, especially the ones with glitter in them.
Right, with the glitter.
I'm 12.
Exactly. So, but that became addictive and it's meditative. You're starting and you're not thinking, you're just coloring.
I've had a coloring book of the mandalas before.
So,
And I'd just sit there at night and just, well, even if the TV's on, it'd be in the background and I'd just be, coloring.
so it's relaxing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's when you can sit down and do something like that. So when I was working in the school system one day, I brought in a bunch of mandalas into the lunchroom because it was like, I don't remember what was going on, but it was a bad week in the school. There's a lot of stress and stuff. So I put out all these mandalas in a bunch of crayons and I just left them on the table. I didn't say anything. I figured some people are going to go, that's Stacy that did that. And some people didn't. But when I came back, people were coloring. And that's the idea is you're getting out of your head and you're taking time to do something to to feel better about anything, about yourself, about whatever it is you're doing. Just that little bit of coloring helped people relax, and it works.
Is there an element to that where it's reconnecting with you as a child? Because I mean, like, certainly in my generation and generations, before me, one of the biggest activities we used to do as kids
Right.
was coloring. I mean, getting that coloring book, and there was nothing more glorious than breaking open that brand new pack of Crayola crayons.
And especially if you got a 64 pack. Holy smokes, right?
Oh, yeah, you were just, and I can remember because I used, as a kid, I was, and I still am fairly crafty when I sit down and put my
Right.
mind to it. But I can remember as a kid getting the Crayola caddy.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
like the Cadillac of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, sure. This is an innate thing if you think about it. So I mean, kids want to draw, they want to color, they want to use instruments. So it's sort of from our primal stages, I think, that we want to create like that. And yeah, does it bring us back? Probably. Do I don't have proof, but probably brings us right back there. But what happens is we get older and we get busy and we give up things that bring us joy. And this is just one way I found that can introduce a little more joy into our lives. And people don't realize that this is such an innate part of ourselves that, you know, it helps you get in touch with your deeper self. And that's really what's happening. So that's why
That's
the
something,
healing can happen there.
yeah, I mean, that's something that we've, I've chatted a lot about throughout the course of the Pod Summit and other podcast episodes that I've done, is just as women, how busy we get. And when we get busy, it's ourselves that we forget.
Absolutely. And women are the best at that, right?
We are really good. And I think that's why, you sort of hit that midlife transition. And for whatever reason, that's where women are really craving to reconnect with that inner
Yeah.
self and that authentic voice, and whatever that is for them is to, you feel, I think that's part of it, is we have all these symptoms and stuff that we have to deal with, but there's something, I hear, and I went through this, you hear this inner pull towards something, but you
Yes.
can never really put your finger on it.
Yes, because I don't know about you, but I mean, it's just a natural um part of being a mother, especially if you're talking about mothers in midlife, where we're busy and we do give up part of ourselves. What I found for me, you tell me if you find this, what I found for me was I had given up so much that I didn't know what to do with myself when I finally had time to do something. So, I didn't know, I didn't remember, how's that? I didn't remember about those pieces of me that like to do X, Y, and Z. So,
Yeah, and the remembering, I'm gonna say, would have been going back to when I was a kid. Because, you go, I got married, was considered young for my age group. I got married at 21. I
yeah,
met my husband I was 18. He's 5 years older. So I really went from, my parents' home. I did a little bit of college, didn't like it, started working. I really started right out of high school. My life in, that segment, that sort of midlife, my 20s and my 30s were being a wife and having kids and doing all of that. So I never really took the time to figure out what were those things that I like to do. I just went along with life.
right.
And then when my youngest was getting ready to go to university, that's when it hit me like a brick wall.
Mm.
It was all of a sudden everything that I hadn't paid attention to for the previous 18 years just suddenly came rushing forward, and I had no choice but to deal with it.
Right. And I think that happens to many of us. I mean, that's part of even in the grief work, right? I worked with women that were like, suddenly I'm alone. There's nobody in the house. I don't know how to deal with this, you know? So, I mean, we relearned how to be alone with yourself. I mean, that is part of the grief and loss process, whether you know it or not, when your kids go break away and go to
Yeah, I was going to
college.
definitely say there is an element of grief.
Right. Because
Um
your
because
identity
there
is
is
mom.
that phase. I mean, my boys are 20 and 23, and we still talk several times a week and we're in close contact. We just have that type of relationship.
Yeah.
But there's still things that they need from me as a mother,
Right.
but not the same.
Right.
And you do, when you start realizing that there is that feeling of grief.
It is a grief, I think, when they leave. So,
Almost definitely it is, because you're sort of mourning those moments when I always say those little pudgy little arms were
yeah,
reaching for hugs, and then all of a sudden those arms aren't so pudgy and they're reaching for the car keys.
right, right. And it's a
And
big
it's that,
transition.
and the transition is just, and I guess part of it is realizing that I'm not needed anymore
Yes.
in that sort of phase of your life, but it's also a call because you're needed in a different way.
Right, right. And some women, I find when they get their grandkids, that's sort of like the next step. But
Oh,
not
there better not be
everybody.
any grandkids anytime soon.
Right, right. But all I'm
I'm
saying
like,
is some
not
women
ready.
some women find that very rewarding, and that's their next phase, but some women want something different. They want something bigger, they find, or they get
And I
into.
think, yeah, I mean, I think back, I told my mother, there's four of us in my family, and I'm the second oldest. Um, and I told my mother that she was having her first grandkid on her 50th birthday.
uh,
I'm going to be 50 in May. And I know grandkids are years out
yep.
for me, which is fine. I'm in absolutely no rush. But I can see how previous generations, probably those women were becoming grandmothers much sooner, so that feeling of being needed in that sort of maternal sense never
Comes
really
back.
went away.
Right,
It was just, in a different format.
right. So, I mean, this is what happens in our midlife. Plus, we're dealing with midlife issues also for
Oh
ourselves.
yeah, because those are just a barrel of fun.
So, all of that on top of each other, right? We all kind of need that healing. We kind of need that release. And that's where I think this, something like this, or what you teach, it could just be writing. It doesn't have to necessarily be art, or it can be a combination of the two. Um, but that's where I find it's helpful. We can find ourselves in these things. I mean, even something as silly as some people might think it is, a vision board. Um, Taking a magazine and cutting out
I
things
got
that you,
three.
there you go,
Right
and
around me, three.
cutting out things that you love, it helps you connect to maybe something you didn't know that you loved, maybe
Yeah,
something, maybe there is that second act, especially now because we all live so much longer, right?
yeah.
What's, you know are you looking for that second act? Maybe there's something there for you. Do you want to be, do you want to be traveling? Do you want to be creating a podcast? Do you want a YouTube channel? It could be anything. But maybe your expertise is coming out in some other way that you really aren't aware, but this can help you find that.
And I see art journaling as, sometimes I refer to journaling as vomiting on a page. You
Yes.
have to you have to purge what's in you out. And I think,
Yes.
to me, it sounds like art journaling is just a prettier version of that. Or
Well,
probably in my case it's going to look like vomit on a page to start.
so it might not be pretty. And this is the thing, if I could get anybody over anything at all, it would be the need to be pretty. So it might not be pretty. I have plenty of ugly things in my book, and you can remake those. If you make something ugly, you can remake them. But it's more about the process. It's much more about the process. It's about sitting down and letting what's in here, which is your heart rate, out on the page, whatever that is. So it could be about your emotions or your feelings for the day. It could be just that you want to sit down and paint something. I mean, that could be that simple. It could be that you want to do um, just quotes on your page, quotes that you find that you love, and you want a book of quotes, and something that you could maybe go through the book when you need something uplifting. I mean, it could be, that's what I love about this process. It could be anything you want, you know?
It's yours to be whatever it's going to be.
Right, exactly. And, to me, what I do is more about playing. It's about breaking everything out. What do I want to put my hands on today? Um, I'm no I'm no big artist, no big painter, but what I do, you saw what I did. I'm looking here on my desk for some other things. I mean, I make scrap piles, and sometimes that's my exercise for the day. I take all the scraps off my desk and I glue them all together, and I use that in my journal in some way as a collage or whatever. So it doesn't
Yeah, I
have to
like
be
that.
anything specific.
I like your scrap pile idea, because I get the little flip calendars from Hay House every year. So
Uh,
every day has, I think I've got some here. So it's like every day has like an
oh, cool stuff.
affirmation, and
Yeah.
it's got a picture. Well, that's just what this one, they're always sort of that context. This one is all animals this year. It was flowers last year. So I don't want to throw them away. I use them for scrap notes. But watching your scrap pile idea, I'm like, yeah, I could definitely see just starting with
Right.
cutting those apart and just doing good old fashioned collage, and maybe mod podging the whole thing over.
Right, exactly. And you can do things like, I mean, you can get small journals. You could easily make a small journal with a piece of paper, they're called concertina um, folded books, but
Oh yeah.
you can cut a piece of paper and make your own journal if you really wanted to. There's plenty of how-tos on YouTube about that. Or, you could get like my new favorite is this square journal, but there's plenty of others. But also, I like small ones, like maybe something this tiny to take with me in my purse, um, for whatever thing I want to make. There's travel journals that are kind of rectangle in size, so you don't have to feel like you have to fill up a whole gigantic, 8.5 by 11 sheet, which may feel daunting. Sometimes those smaller ones are easy to start with. And actually, something that I do every year that I really love is a woman, her website is called Daisy Yellow, and she started doing index card a day. So every year it's June and July, and she has you take a simple index card. So do I have one here? I don't have one handy, but an index card. Okay. Nope, this isn't even one. This was an index card, this part. So she
Okay.
has you take an index card and do some piece of art on it. And it's not about perfection. She makes a mess. She does, stripes sometimes. She does all circles, sometimes different colors, same colors. She has themes, and she has, like daily ones that you can do. Or you can do whatever you want on an index card. But at the end, you have 61 index cards. So I have a bunch of those. I use those in my journals to get started on a page. So it's simple things, right? You're just taking the time to do a little something for yourself, a little self-discovery, a little letting go, or maybe it's coloring a mandala. Maybe that's all you want to do. And it might take you a week to finish it, and that's okay.
That's okay. And you actually have a special gift for our Pod Summit listeners. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
So I have a 5-day art journal challenge. It's got 5 different things that you can do. So you don't have to do them every day, but you could. But it's just a downloadable page. It happens to be on something called Gumroad, but you have the link, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just, I say it's a 5-day art journal challenge, but you know what? If you only have a piece of paper, fold a piece of paper in half and call this your journal. Use what you have. Don't let things stop you. If you only have colored pencils, use the colored pencils. If you only have paint, use the paint. And even if you think, oh, the paint's going to bleed through and make a mess, don't worry about it. Just get it done. That's
perfect. I'm definitely going to take up the 5-day art journal challenge, and I will probably make myself be brave enough and share them in your section of where this is going to be. So if you're listening and you want to get your copy of the 5-day art journal challenge, make sure you go to nectargrowth.com. That's nectargrowth.com. And by being a part of this Pod Summit, you will receive the first 30 days free. But I know we're going to be having so much fun. You're going to want to stick around. And I have a feeling we're going to be doing a little bit of art journaling in there too. It is completely away from social media and has all kinds of resources. And we're going to be adding more every month. And you'll be able to join in our monthly fireside chats. And this is where you can connect with women just like you, share in authentic conversation, and yes, even vent. So make sure you join us at nectargrowth.com. You can find the links in the show notes and in your daily Pod Summit emails. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to connecting with you. And Stacy, thank you so much for sharing your story and your expertise today.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for having me. Everybody have fun, and I want to see all your creations. I hope that people will take the challenge.
We'll have a special section in there just for our art journaling.
Great. Awesome. Well, good luck. Good luck with the rest of the summit.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.